All right, guys, welcome back to the Sex and Bacon podcast. So, on today's episode, we're doing something a little different. It was going to originally be like this group conversation for this little series I'm doing called The Dating Circle. But because we ran into some serious technical issues last year, we are like just getting into it now, which I kind of do feel like it lined up perfectly. And I feel like the universe sometimes has things happen that way just so that like you can kind of like come back and focus. So I have with me Sarah Davis, all the way from California, the lovely, warm California. And we're going to dive deep into just dating in general and kind of like your experiences, what you're looking for, and then kind of actively share, I guess, some dates that you're going to go on, I might go on, and kind of see what comes of it. So, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah, right. I mean, I feel like it's been like months and months, which it has, but in my mind also I'm like feels like it was literally just like a week ago because, time goes by so fast. So,
Yeah, I was thinking back and I think that it worked out really well because I feel like I'm in a different place in life and in dating than I was a few months ago. I felt like that's a really good time. Like, I'm glad that we had the bit of a break so that I could focus on family and holidays. I definitely had some stuff going on. And so now I feel like I'm back in the dating world. I'm back out there and it's a really good time to have this chat and catch up.
good, perfect. I'm excited for it too. And yeah, and I feel like when I started, like the whole goal was like, I was going to actively be dating as well and like, going through it. And then I kind of had met somebody and was sitting in this place of like I wasn't dating for a few months. But that ended. And so it's like I'm kind of back in that spot too. And I feel like re-energized and motivated to actually do it. So just in general, like what's going on in California in the dating world itself, like I picture it to be drop dead gorgeous men everywhere, tanned, hot bodies, all tall. Like that is literally what I think of when I think of like, like, oh, your dream guy. Well, he's got to be in California somewhere on a beach, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, except that if they're swiping on me, they're usually a catfish. So I'm
Okay.
very suspicious if that's like the stack of likes I'm getting. I definitely am double checking the verification badge next to the name because if I'm getting all, yeah, tan fit blonde men, then it's definitely a bot or
Is
an
that what you're into though? Like, is that like your thing? Like,
no.
what kind of men are you into?
I like bearded dudes, darker features. I like a little bisexual, like, if they're actually bisexual, great. If they're not, like if they paint their
Sorry, you
nails
like men that
or
are a little bit bisexual?
I do. I don't know. I think it's kind of fun, like when guys are not like super toxically masculine. Like I love masculinity, but I like someone who doesn't take it super seriously and just is really confident in who they are. So, they'll wear a bright colored shirt or paint their nails, or, they're not really locked into a very like specific type of masculinity. Like they allow it to be defined for themselves. I find that really attractive just because to me it represents just being really comfortable in their own skin and like really open-minded about other people. And I tend to be, and I'm bisexual myself, so I feel like that's something that's kind of like nice to kind of see with other people is like just that like flexibility, whether it's just, whether it is their sexuality or whether it's just kind of how they present themselves, that it's not, they're not like a rigid thinker. So
Okay.
that is something I like. But yeah, tall, dark, and handsome, definitely a beard, some tattoos. That's really nice. Taller the better. It's not, I'm pretty short, so it's not a requirement, but it's nice. I like to feel small. So yeah, and there's definitely like a lot of that in LA, definitely on my side of town where guys are a little scruffier, a little edgier. So that's kind of my vibe, but I seem to attract a very wide range.
Okay, so hold on. My mind is just going now because I know we kind of talked before about just in general. So like you were married. Like so for everybody
Yeah,
listening, Sarah was married.
mhm.
You're divorced for how long now?
4.5 years.
Okay, so I saw a picture of Sarah while she was married, and it is like very much what you would imagine in like the Stepford wife,
Yes,
right? Like
yes.
night and day, two totally different people.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to me then when you brought up that you're bisexual or that like, the interest in like a man that's bisexual. So I have to ask, was this something that in your marriage was known or something that like you guys actively participated in you being able to be with women as well?
No, this was part of my post-divorce self-exploration journey. I had a moment of realizing, like, oh my God, I'm like deeply attracted to this person that is right in front of me, and they are definitely not male. And kind of thinking back and realizing, like, oh, there might be other situations, other times when that was something that was there, but I didn't have a name for it. And I met out at the time I was hanging out with some people who were much younger than me. And I feel like these like Gen Z girls are like so much more aware, like they've been raised with a wider expression of, sexuality and gender. And so they're much more confident in that side of themselves. Being around these women who were very confident in like who they were attracted to and what they wanted, it's like a light bulb went off, like, oh, I can be that way too. Like I don't have to be locked into one definition of what that looks like for me. And so that kind of like was like, oh, that was a really huge realization because I was very much like locked into my marriage and it was very traditional. And my ex husband was very traditional. And I don't think it occurred to either one of us to ever open things up or do anything in that way. He's very much like blonde, blue eyed, very clean cut looking. I mean, not now, he's grown out his hair. We're both having some very interesting post-divorce physical transformations, some more questionable than others, but we do he's a good guy, he's a good man, great father. But yeah, so it was a really interesting realization. And then of course you go through that initial thing of like trying to date women and feeling that, what does that look like? And I think I've kind of to the realization that for me, I definitely love women. I'm attracted to women, but it's really hard to start dating them at a later age. And I think dating men, whether it's a preference or just a comfortable space, is just kind of where I've ended up. I like knowing about myself that the world is wide open. There's really no
Okay.
limitation to who I could be attracted to, but that has more to do with how I see the world and how I describe myself and what my identity is like more than like, oh, I want to date a certain thing. I'm
Yeah.
seeking specifically this. And I think that at least right now for me, like with all of the upheaval in my life and in my family, dating a man feels kind of like safe. Like I want that energy in my life. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of where I've been focusing right now. And it's not, I don't know where things will end up, but it's just like I've just right now for now I'm dating men.
Okay. I was gonna ask that if you would just date a woman because it's it's funny, I meet a lot of couples that, are married, this or that. Some of them that are, I guess, in the lifestyle per se, but it's only because their partner is bisexual. And so, they don't swing with other couples or anything, but they definitely do seek out to bring a woman into their relationship so that she still feels like she's having that aspect of her needs met. Which I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure a lot of men look at that as a bonus for me because she wants to play with another woman. I also now get to play with another woman, which is great. And like, whatever, if it works, it works. But it's interesting because I do find that a lot more women are actually in a space where they are finding themselves that are attracted to women. There's I think, a softer, sensual side of it that they're craving in some way, like at least from the conversations I'm having with some of these married women, that's what they're after. So yeah, I even think for myself, I think women are absolutely stunning and beautiful and great. I've never been with just a woman, and I do think I could see myself sexually having that experience, but I don't know if relationship-wise I could ever feel like that would be something that I could do just that. But yeah, I think as we start to get older, we realize, like, we're attracted to people more so than sometimes just, you know, the gender and stuff, and it's because we've get different things from different people, like, our needs get met in different ways, so I think that's kind of interesting, and I think that's kind of fun and, like, good to know, I didn't know that. But on the end of a man being bisexual, I feel like that would be where I would really struggle, and I've come across it before over the years, like a guy that was bisexual, and he told me right out the gate, and at first I was like, yeah, like, okay, not an issue. However, then that definitely triggered more of a thought of it's one thing for me to have to think about, is my partner attracted or thinking other women are beautiful? But then I was like, oh, now you've just opened up the whole world. It's not just the women I'm competing with, I'm competing with the men as well. And would he feel that then that wasn't considered cheating because he's just going to get his needs met from like just a guy because he's also into that? Like it just created all this stuff in my head. And I'm like, I can't do it. I was like, I'm pretty open, but I was like, I don't know that I'm ready for that level of like openness to date somebody that was truly bisexual. And I mean, obviously, like a world of different trust issues and things with just situations like that. But that's what triggered my mind. So that's obviously not a thought for you at all.
No, and I think that there's definitely a big difference between being bisexual and seeking a monogamous relationship versus being in an established relationship and seeking to open it up like later. I think those are very different conversations. And I think that I am like painfully monogamous. Like I have a very hard time imagining being with somebody else when I'm with a partner. Like my focus is really just on them. And so for me, like, of course, we're always going to experience attraction to people outside of our relationship. That's just normal. We're human. We notice other people. But whether we choose to act on that, I don't think has anything to do with our sexuality and all to do with our personalities and our relationships and the choices that we make. So for me, I don't see a difference. Like if I don't trust my partner, I don't trust my partner. And it has nothing to do with who they're attracted to. It's because they're not reassuring me, or maybe it's my own lack of confidence that if there's something happening where I'm suspicious or I'm feeling insecure, then that's something to explore. And I don't think it's necessarily tied to who they're attracted to. And I think that there's definitely a misconception. I've experienced it when I tell people about my sexuality. I think people are like, oh, so are you going to want to like go out and hook up with girls if we're dating? And it's like, no, I'm looking for a monogamous relationship. Just because my attraction goes, all over doesn't mean that I have this like ravenous need to like fuck everybody. I'm still seeking a monogamous relationship. It's just that I'm not necessarily seeking one particular like gender or gender expression. And so I think there's definitely a big misconception there. And I can understand for sure, like, why that happens. Like, cause yeah, you get a little bit suspicious of like, oh, that girl's like looking at my man. And now it's like, oh, is that man looking at my man? And so maybe it's because I'm part of that community that I know how I feel about it, that it doesn't cause any additional stress. And for me, it actually feels like I think it's hot. I think it's cool, and like, it doesn't concern me in terms of like fidelity. It's more like if I feel like you are going to look at other people, then that's just not somebody that I want to be with if you don't make me feel secure in our connection. And I don't know, like I've never been in a relationship where we've like opened things up. So I don't know if that's something that I would want. I feel like I've always been seeking that validation and connection so much with my partner that it's hard to imagine ever like opening it up. So I feel like my focus is really like finding something really healthy and stable and fulfilling and validating just within a monogamous partnership. And then if down the road we want to feel like we want to explore something because we're in such a great place that we want to introduce a new element, then that's something like to explore down the road. But that's not something I really have any experience. Like I've been like the third, like I could do that, where it's like you guys sort it out when you get home. I'm just here for fun and you guys deal with it. Like that's more of like a comfortable space for me. I'm like, I cannot imagine having someone come into my relationship because I feel
Yeah.
very loyal and also a little bit territorial maybe. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here to be your bisexual myth buster right now. I cannot imagine.
So when you're on the apps, what do you have it that you're looking for, men or women?
It depends on the mood. Sometimes it's everyone, 'cause now there are filters for men, women, and non-binary people, and so a lot of the time I'll just have, like, everybody and just sort of see what happens, but I've had such terrible luck with women on the apps.
Really?
Women
Worse
are
than like with
hard.
men?
So I tend to connect most with men. I mean, I've dated women and, I've met some really lovely people and just things haven't worked out the way that things don't work out with men sometimes. But right now, I have it set to just men. I don't know. It's just the vibe I'm feeling right now.
What would you say you've noticed so far as the biggest difference with like going out with, say, a woman or lining up a date with a woman through the app versus going out with a man or lining up a date with like a man through the app?
With a man, it's a very predictable script. Like, I know how it goes. I know how to play the game. I know the kind of dance that we do, and, like, I feel like I have an expectation around, like, how a man needs to behave in order to be someone I wanna date. You know,
Mhm.
how I expect them to ask me out and to want to plan a date and to be like texting me a certain amount, and just like certain like body language on the date. Like I just feel like that is something I'm very familiar with. So it feels much more comfortable. Whereas when I'm dating a woman, just because I have so much less experience, it feels like who asks who out? Like there's no like set rules. It's like, well, I can ask somebody out. I think that that's really cool and really freeing that there's not the same type of expectation, but also it can feel scary because then I feel like it brings out a much bolder side of me where I feel like
Mhm.
I'm asking people out and like I would never really do that with a man. I feel like, oh, a man has to pursue me, but with a woman, I feel like I'm much more comfortable stepping into a more dominant role, which is a really cool side to explore. I just haven't had
Right.
much opportunity to really explore that side of myself and to be the one who's like, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll pay on the date. Like it's really cool. It's out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
So it's
Interesting.
cool, but I feel like I sometimes like when things get tough, I just like retreat to what's comfortable.
Yeah.
Being on a date with a man, like I know what to expect in so many ways.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, interesting. Because I feel like, I mean, I've never really had a problem being the one to initiate going out and asking like a guy out either. But I think that's just definitely me being more in my masculine side. So, like, I've had to really learn that lesson of letting them lead the conversation to being, "Here's my number," or something like that, because ultimately I'm like, "Okay, that is what I want in a partner long term," right? Like, I want somebody who is capable of, like, taking the initiative, taking that step, being assertive. So it's just like I feel like I get antsy where I'm like, "Oh, you're cute. I would really like to go out with you." And then I'm like, right, but I would ask because I just feel like, okay, like, it's 2025, like, does it really matter who's asking who? But then I'm like, but if I initiate and I'm the one that has to lead this, is that gonna be like I'm setting the tone for then that's what the whole relationship's gonna be like, right? So, with
Yeah.
women, yeah, I feel like it's kind of that a little bit more of a give and take is what I would say, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's maybe for me why I want someone to kind of come in and just like sort of sweep me off my feet is I think that being like an independent, hardworking, like single parent, like we're so used to like just taking charge and making things happen. Like, that was what led to the downfall of my marriage is that, I was always that person. I was always from the very beginning, I was always the one taking charge, making plans, planning out the finances, like making things happen, signing the kids up for stuff. And so that is like my natural like default. But I've realized that, yeah, that if you do that, then you're really going to attract men who want someone who's going to always dominate. And I do want a more equal partnership and so it really has been an interesting lesson of like backing that off and letting a man kind of like show me what his style is, like how he approaches relationships and what kind of energy and in assertiveness and intention he's willing to put in. But then it's also again like with women when they tend to, they might be a little bit more hesitant because we're all kind of socialized, I think, in the same ways sometimes that it pushes me to then be able to release that dominance in a safer place, where I don't feel like, oh, I'm gonna have to always be in this dominant role if I'm in a same-sex partnership, like it's a were, like, up for negotiation 'cause yeah, I don't have a problem with asking a man out, and I feel like sometimes, like, I'm shocked when I see these other women who are like, "Oh, I can't imagine, like, I would never," and I'm like, "Oh, like, I totally would, but I don't know if I want to. I kinda want, someone to come to me, and I also am a big believer with men that, like, they don't do anything they don't wanna do, and so it's different for me to ask them out and have them say yes versus them pursuing me. It is a very different vibe.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so what's been like your worst date story so far? Like since you've like dived back into this whole like dating realm?
Okay, well, this one's actually pretty recent. I met someone I was off the apps, like, over, like, Christmas, like, I focused on, like, my kids and stuff for the holidays, and then, I was on kind of a health journey, but I had, like, lost a bunch of weight, and I was like, "Ooh, I've got some cuter pictures, like, I'm gonna get back on the apps," and I was feeling really good about it. So I was back on Hinge, and I matched with someone who was, like, my type, but, like, maybe a little, like, nerdier than I would totally want, but he was, like, so sweet, and he was, like, tall and bearded, and he was, like, very much, like, sweet Midwestern. He has, like, Canadian family, so you can, like, imagine, like, the very, like, sweet, kind of innocent type, which again, not usually my thing, but he was, like, so great about like pursuing me and like wanting to meet up, and I'll come to you and pick, is there somewhere close to you like this and that. And like I was like, oh, I really like this. Like this was a very different energy than like typical LA. So I'm like, I'm gonna try it. So we went on a couple of dates and he was very sweet and he continued to be really consistent about pursuing. We had like these little inside jokes and it was just like, okay. So it kind of felt like it was moving a little bit quickly, but it felt like he was very consistent. So I was like, okay, like we'll see how. And so then our third date was Valentine's Day. And I was like, I don't want to go out on Valentine's Day. That is like a rookie move, but you can like come over and, and he had written me this really cute long text about like, oh, there's this girl that I like. Should I ask her out for Valentine's Day? I'm imagining we hang out and watch TV and like order a pizza. And like it was just really silly and cute, but he was being very vulnerable. And I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't know how to handle someone who's just so like, I like you. I want to see you. Let's get to know each other. So he came over, and the first thing I noticed is that he's brought a backpack, like a little, and it's like a mini backpack. And I'm like, okay.
That would scream bisexual to me if I saw a man carrying a mini backpack, just saying. So I don't
I
know if
had a
you
bad
obliged.
experience with another man who showed up to a date with a mini backpack. So I was like, okay. But I'm like, he's never carried any kind of bag before. So I realized like he's brought an overnight bag
Yeah.
to my house on our third date. We have not hooked up. We have like made out a little bit. This is like, he's now like made that assumption that because I've invited him to my home for dinner, he's just walked in with straight up with an overnight bag. And I was like, okay, okay. So then, we're sitting and we're talking, and we had made a little bet. We played the New York Times games, like the Wordle games. And
Mhm.
so I had kicked his butt. And so I bet him that he'd have to tell me an embarrassing story if he lost. So we sit down and we're talking, and he starts telling me this embarrassing story. I'm doing air quotes, embarrassing story about how he had an on again, off again girlfriend who was like a toxic alcoholic. And I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. And one of their off periods, he was messaging with a friend, someone he'd known for a while, and they used to hang out occasionally, but he felt like it was starting to get flirtier. So
Mhm.
he asked her, said like, oh, we should go on a date. And she kind of like brushed it off. And then they like made plans to hang out. And then he went to her house to like pick her up and made a joke about like, oh, how he's going to like come on to her at some point if they like stay at her house. And she did not take that well. She really got very upset, like asked him to leave, and it kind of like ended things. And so he was very indignant that like this woman had treated him like so like cruelly and horribly. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, so you were friends with her and then out of the blue, like kind of came on to her in her home. Like, I would
Mhm.
have been very uncomfortable if someone I'd been friends with for 5 years suddenly came on to me. I would probably kick you out as well. Like, I'd shut it down and be like,
For
no.
sure.
But he's telling it as if like this is like a kind of like a sad, embarrassing story. Like, oh, she was so mean. And I'm just like, bro, like, what? I'm supposed to like feel sorry for this?
Yeah.
Like, you're telling me this story, and like, first of all, like, this is not a good, embarrassing story. I thought you were gonna tell me something like cute and silly, and instead, you just told me that you have no ability to like read signals at all
Yeah.
or to check in. And so I was like, oh, that's what my gut was telling me when I was like, oh, this is weird and different with the nice guy.
Mhm.
It then became this very like self-serving, like, oh, I'm such a nice guy and people are so mean to me. And I was like, no, I
Mm.
just really like can't pick up on signals. And then he told me he'd only slept with like 4 people in his whole life. And I was like, okay, no, no, like, no. So I hooked up with him and then immediately kicked him out. That's how that story
Like
ended.
you didn't even let him spend the night. Like you kicked him out that night. Like, sorry, you got to go.
Yeah, no, because I was like, it's Valentine's Day. I still want to like get some. And then immediately after, I literally like stood up and was like, okay. And he's like, oh, is this my good night yawn? And I was like, yep, bye. You can leave now.
Was the hookup
Um,
at least worth it?
it was fine. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
more just like it's been a while and you're here and okay, it was
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. Like some
And then
average Valentine's love, right?
yeah. And so then the next day I get like this very long text message about, oh, I'm so sorry. Cause like oh my god, he had the worst moves too. He definitely had, like, boyfriend moves. I'm like, "You can't pull this with a girl that you, like, just are hooking up with for the first time." And so then he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, all this, like, validation seeking, like, "I really like this and that. I'm so sorry if I made you uncomfortable." And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is your whole thing. Your whole thing is being the like sad sack nice guy and like girls are so mean to you. And I'm like, no, like you have issues. You need to go to therapy and you need to take some time. So that was just such a bummer, but I cannot get over like the overnight bag. Like, bro, you do not walk into my house with an overnight bag. Leave it in your car. I told
Yeah, and
you, I was like,
just in case, right? Like, you can't assume. If you haven't had that conversation, I feel like that's definitely one of those things where somebody should be like, if you're especially on, like, a Friday, Saturday night, if you're asking somebody to come over, like, you safely say, like, "Okay, like, are we just hanging out for a little bit?" Or, like,
"Mhm."
"Should I bring something? Are you wanting me to stay over?" You have the conversation, you don't ever assume, especially then to bring it in, right? Like, that's awkward, and I'd be embarrassed for somebody who did that without having that conversation.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
get it. And like, if things had gone well, I probably would have had him stay over, but
Right.
like, leave it in the
Mm.
car and like go get it if you're like, oh, well, I wasn't sure how things were going to go.
Mhm.
So I prepared, but I didn't want to assume to walk into my house with a backpack was just wild
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
Wild.
So he didn't get a call back.
No, I put him in his place pretty firmly. And I did tell him that he has a lot to unpack when it comes to sex and dating. So
Yeah.
I was like, with love, I think you need to work on some of this. And he just kept going like, "Thank you for being so nice to me," and blah, 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 and I was just like, "Okay."
So do you have, like, an age parameter? Like, when you're actually, like, on the apps looking, like, what is it that you specifically are looking for? Like, do you have very, like, defined kind of features in a man, or are you really just open to, like, not I don't wanna say anybody and anything, but just in general, like, you are very open with, like, what you find attractive, and then you just kinda weed it out from there in conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I my age range is like 35 to 50, and I'm 41. So I
Mhm.
try to be kinda open-minded about the age range because I feel like younger guys are, like, too young, but then older guys are too old. Like, I'm pretty youthful, and I like to, like, go to concerts and, occasionally do mushrooms in the desert. So it's like, you've gotta be able to, like, match my vibe, but then I also have kids, and I have a day job, so you have to have that level of responsibility. So I'm trying to hit that, like, sweet spot. I don't know, like, they have to be cute, and, like, for me, cute can be it's not always, like, conventionally cute, like, a picture can be, like, silly and goofy, like, if you get something of, like, their personality, like, that's what I really like a photo, like, are you out somewhere doing something fun? Are you with friends? Like, does it show me something about you and not just like, I hate, like, the guys who have, like, 5 car selfies. And they're just, like, mean mugging, like, at a weird angle in their car in, like, every shot. That doesn't tell me anything about you. I wanna see pictures of people, like, out and about, and so it's, like, even if they're not, like, "Oh my god, he's, like, so hot," if there's something about the picture that I'm like, "Oh, like, that's really, really cute," or, like, "That's really fun," or I can see myself in that kinda situation, and then I definitely read the prompts very carefully, like, did you take the time to actually, like, put a thoughtful response? Like, did you put a voice prompt and it's not just like a clip of a song, it's actually like you telling a dad joke? Like I'm looking for like the effort. It's almost like not so much the content, but like, did you put thought into your profile? A range of photos in a range of different places. You responded to different kinds of prompts and none of them are like negative. So I feel like I try to be open because I'm just trying to look at like what is somebody trying to say about themselves? Like, are they making that effort to share something real about themselves? And so then I kinda, like, go back and, like, overall, like, look, is this someone that I would notice at a bar? Is this someone who I would strike up a conversation with if it was a friend of a friend? Is this someone who, if they came up to me and started talking, like, would I be interested to hear what they had to say? I try to be kind of open-minded, like, maybe they're not, like, the hottest person out there, but, like, for me, attraction can definitely grow based on, like, personality. Like, if they're funny and they're smart and we have a lot to talk about and they are not taking themselves too seriously and they want to get to know me, like that can definitely build over time. So I think that for me, it's like the impression that I get from the profile, not so much like certain like hallmarks. But like I do try to avoid dating actors. I try to avoid people who have like crazy like retail schedules because I know my time is really valuable as a single parent. So I do kind of try to be practical about lifestyle, but for the most part, I'm not like, "Oh, he's too short." I try to let someone kinda speak for themselves.
Oh, I'm so harsh on those things. I was literally listening to you and I was like, "I think she does dating way better than I do." Or, like, you're navigating the apps, like, the right way and, like, compared to maybe what I do. Because like, I do very much so, like, a guy has to be minimum 5'10", and even
Okay.
5'10" feels too short, and I'm only, like, 5'3" in some, but, like, honestly, like, I don't know what it is, like, I need a tall guy, and there's times I've come across some of, like, the hottest men, and I'm like, "Damn," and then I'm like, 5'7", I'm like, "Fuck, nope, can't even
Shorter
give it a
guys are
time of
better
day."
at sex. Shorter guys are better
Really?
at sex. Yes, because they feel like they have to like work for it. Whereas like a hot guy just feels like he just like shows up. I swear. You got to take a
I
risk.
could see that, like, the ego of just, like, "I'm here, I'm
Mhm.
beautiful, be appreciative of, like, me," right? And, like, don't get me wrong, like and, like, my style changes drastically, like, I for the last couple years, like, very much so into, like, the farmer, country boy thing, cowboy, whatever, like, the rugged, like, the hairier the better, the facial hair, whatever, they can even be soft and, like, fuller, thicker guys, which, you know, rewind 10, 15 years, it was, they had to be fit, this and that. Not saying I'm not still attracted to fit men. I am. I like a person who is active. I do believe health and wellness is a huge thing for me and a lifestyle for me. So I need my partner to have that same type of motivation towards living a healthy lifestyle. But you could still be a little bit like, whatever, a hardworking man that works on like with his hands in the country. And so it's like a whole thing. And that's been like my thing for like the last couple years. But height, it's just one of those things that, like, I can't. I don't know, and I feel like it's because, like, if I'm looking at you like you are the same height as me, I don't look up to you as, like, being the man, which is so weird, and I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there just in general for myself, but, like, yeah, so 5'10" minimum, and I don't really read their things, because I feel like I'm brutal. I think I have a hard time putting myself out there in that same way file, so then I'm like, well and, like, don't get me wrong, some of the ones that, like, have something witty and I'm like, "Oh, you're funny," so that, like, gave you a few points. But overall, I don't say much because it's like I'm scared to really fully put myself out there on the app for everybody to see. No, if we match, then it's like you'll get that like in-depth more version and I'll give you all the answer all the questions and all the things. But yeah, I'm a little bit more like reserved in like what I just fully put out there. But like I love listening to how you say what you're looking for when you look at those and how you're analyzing like their responses and their pictures and all of those things because that really should be how it is versus just like cute, not cute, not cute, not, which is kind of what most of us do when we're swiping, right? It sounds like you're obviously putting genuine thought into, who you're looking at and who you're trying to match with for the benefits of the purpose of trying to find a genuine connection, right?
Yeah, because I feel like I don't want to get a million matches. I wanna get, like, good matches, and so I try to do the same thing of, like, what I appreciate on other people's profiles, I try to put on mine.
Yeah.
I try to put pictures, again, that show my personality, that show things that I'm proud of or excited about. I try to be I mean, I don't know that my prompt responses are, like, super vulnerable, but I try to make them very, like, personalized, like, so you can get
Mhm.
a sense of who I am, and then for me, like, when I get a match on Hinge or I get a like on Hinge, like, I look like, did they just like a photo or did they, like, respond to a prompt? Like, did they
Mhm.
write something? And I really appreciate like, I'm much more likely to match with someone if they write something to me, even if they're not, like, 100% my type or I'm like, I don't know," but it's like if they write something engaging and they actually respond, and
Mhm.
not just like, "Hey," or they just send a like on a photo, and it's always, like, the sexiest photo that you get, like, a bunch of likes on, and I'm like, "Okay, if you're only bothering to like that photo, then I'm not gonna really engage with you, and so I'd rather get
Mhm.
fewer matches, but have a better conversation,
Yeah, that's fair.
and and I'm okay with that, like, the way I am right now is that I'm not for everybody, the way
Mhm.
I look, my personality, the things I'm into, the fact that I'm a single mom, like, that's not for everyone, and I don't want to waste my time, and I don't wanna waste their time, like, I don't wanna have the same conversations over and over again, and then they all just, like, fizzle out because there's
Yeah.
something that they don't love about me. So I'm, like, weeding out as much as I can up front, like, "You like this or you don't like this."
Are you very adamant in the beginning, like, "I'm looking for a life partner," or are you actually kind of open to, like, more casual kind of dating, or is it pretty much like a boundary for you now, like, you're not looking for anything casual and you won't really waste your time with it?
For the most part, I'm pretty upfront with I'm looking for something real.
Mm,
I think there have been other times where I was a little bit more flexible, like, I just wanna have a good connection and then whatever
mhm.
comes of that. is fine. Now I've kind of gotten to a place where I'm like, I'm not desperate. I will wait. I'm happy
Mhm.
with my life. Things are good. I will be very clear. There is one exception right now. I'm chatting with somebody who has a really crazy custody schedule. He's like a full time single parent. And so he's kind of just looking to get some. And the only reason I'm entertaining this chat is because he texted me out of the blue and I had no idea who he was, but he texted like my phone number and he wasn't in my phone. And he was like, "Hey, Sarah," like, and then like, it's Alex and this and that. And I was like, "Who?" And he described this whole date. And I was like, "Oh, that really does sound like me, but like I have no idea who this is." And he said like what we did and this is what happened and it went well. And so I literally ripped through like 3 years worth of calendars trying to see if I went because I write down everything. If I went to date with this person because he looked familiar. He sent me a picture and I was like, "Yeah, like I've definitely like seen this picture. And clearly I gave you my phone number. You're not in my phone, so I have no idea." And like he described it more and more and I'm like going insane like, "Oh my god, how do I not remember this?" Because all the details sounded exactly like me. Like we went for salad and you told me like things I could do better on my profile and this and that. And I'm like, oh, I am like the queen of feedback. So like, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, I kind of like, I just biffed it. And so like, I'm just reaching out again to like say hi and see how you are. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I really thought I was crazy. And so I was like, "Am I really who you think you're talking to?" So I sent him a picture, and I was not the right Sarah. I was a different girl. We had matched on Tinder and exchanged number, or I'd given him my number, and he had never texted me. And I guess he did end up meeting this other girl and having a date that was, like, really scarily similar to something I would do. And it was the funniest thing, and he was so worried that I was gonna be, like, really angry with him, but I was, like, dying laughing. And so we just started, like, talking, and he's like, "You're really cool." And, like, I sent him a picture, and I was like, "Yep." Like, obviously, we matched at some point. He's a single parent, and I'm a single parent. So, like, now we're just kinda, like, chatting, and, like, we're friends. We talk about how hard it is. We sext a little, and we're trying to meet up, but his schedule is really crazy. So normally I'm like, absolutely not. But that story was so funny to me that it took way too long to figure out that I was not who he meant to message. And he was so embarrassed.
That's funny, and yeah, I would say it's definitely worth getting together.
What if it turns into something and it was like kismet? I was like, I cannot walk away from this. So
No,
even if
no.
nothing happens, even if we just have lunch, like it's the funniest thing to me. But yes, that's the one exception that I didn't even go looking for. He found me apparently. But yes, I am very upfront with people about what I'm
Okay.
looking for. And if they're not looking for the same, I have absolutely no problem being like, whatever. I used to be more like, oh, well, casual's okay. But now I'm like, no, we're not
Yeah,
the same things, and that's totally fine. I wish you well. I ain't got time for that.
that's fair. I really had to put that boundary out there in the last, I mean, year, I guess, but sometimes I feel like it's like I do everything right. I say all the right things. I ask all the right questions. Are you looking for a serious relationship? I'm not looking for casual. Like, yes, I am looking to settle down, blah, blah, blah. Okay, because I date younger guys, but it's like, are you okay? Some of them that don't have kids, like, are you okay with not having kids? Like, wanting to really make sure we're on the same page. And I have found lately, like last year, probably before I started dating that last guy that I dated for about 4 or 5 months, that so many men will just same thing, still do that whole tell you what you want to hear, ready to settle down. I'm like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't have time for casual. That's not what I'm interested in. I will not sleep with you if you're sleeping with other people. Yep, 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 yep. No, you like 100%. And then it's like the same thing. You get sucked into these things and you're having fun and everything's great and like you think you're still on the same page and you're checking back in and it's like, well, like I got this kind of going on and yeah, I still want those things, but it's just like, oh fuck, man. And it's just draining. And it's just like, what's the point in wasting your time and my time? Like, plain and simple, if we don't want the same things, just say it and move on. Find somebody who wants what you want. If you're only looking for casual, simply tell people that in the beginning. There's a lot of women out there who are looking for casual, and that's all they want. They don't have time for anything more. They have kids, they have careers, they have friends, and they don't want to give somebody 5 nights a week of their time. Date those ones. It's not like if you're upfront and honest about the fact that you're looking for casual, you're never gonna find a girl to fuck, but just be upfront about it. And I think men, especially younger men, still have a hard time thinking they can be honest and that it's okay. Like, what you want is just as important as what I want. We may not want the same things, and that's okay, and we don't have to, but I've really had to take sex off the table in general, first meeting somebody, going on dates, talking, because I feel like as soon as that has happened, then it just feels like nobody's taking the time to genuinely see if, like, you're a person I want to spend time with outside of a sexual relationship. And then they get caught up and focused on the sex part. And it's just like, okay, so you know what? Sex isn't an option. Sex is off the table. We're hanging out. What kind of effort are you still going to put in to getting together, knowing you're not getting anything out of it at the end of the day? Right? Like, and if you're not, then that just tells me that you're not looking for something serious. Because if you are genuinely looking for something serious and you think that we have a connection, you're not giving a shit about the fact that you're not getting laid because you're actually trying to like get to know me and asking me the hard questions just like I'm asking you, right? I've really had to move very delicately and like but very solid in that, like making that the precedence in every dating situation I've gone into. I feel like it worked in the last one very much so. I mean, we talked for probably 2 months before we even met in person, or like a month and a half, because my schedule was insane. And then I just found like, wow, he's consistently still here. He hasn't bailed on me because I haven't followed through on a date because I was limited to like 1 day a week that I had off. And it was great. He had all these qualities that I was like really like into. And then yeah, when we did kind of like start dating, but it was like, but then there was all these other things where I'm like, no, this didn't align. I felt guilty. I was like, I've been dating you for like 4 months. I really wanted this to work. I feel like I did everything right, but then I was like, I still need to honor the fact that these things don't line up with who I am and what I'm actually looking for in a partner. And it's okay for me to end it. And it's not because I did something wrong or you did something wrong, but it's just honoring the fact that I think we're moving in different directions, or like, we're not aligned enough for it to make sense to keep trying, right? But it was the healthiest, like, situation and relationship I've been in, and because I was just so genuinely honest with what I'm looking for. And then I feel like since then, like, it's kind of opened up the doors where I was like, "Wow, I was able to stay true to myself, stay true to what I was looking for, honor myself in that way, keep those boundaries." But then when something really wasn't working, I could end it with, honesty and integrity. And then I feel like since then, the men that have come into my life definitely align a little bit more. And I feel like that's the thing with women and men. It's like if you're off track with what you're really looking for and you can't even follow through with what you're speaking about that you want, well, the universe is just going to give you confusion and
Yeah,
chaos,
yes.
right?
That's such a
Yeah.
powerful insight. I think it's amazing that you were really able to push yourself to have that honesty and to be
Hmm.
very clear on what you want and what you're looking for. Because I think that we tend to have that scarcity mindset of like, "Oh, we've got a good guy. Shouldn't this be, like, good enough?" We just sort of settle for what we have, and I think it's really amazing that once we start to really be true to ourselves and really be vulnerable and honest, it's like we start calling in better things into our lives. Like, I really believe that, yeah, what you put out is what you get back.
Yeah.
So if you're putting out that honesty and that communication and ending things kindly and being really true to yourself, like, you're gonna get that back. Like, the right person is gonna come along and be able and you're gonna be receptive to it. I think
Yeah.
part of the problem is, like, I think when we're having that confusion, it's like, yeah, you get all these weird signals because you don't realize that you're putting out that weird signal. But now if you're in a place where you're really clear on what you want and what you're
Hmm.
looking like, you're going to have someone meet that energy. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so cool. Like, I'm trying to be in that energy of being very clear what I'm looking for and not entertaining situations that aren't, like, meeting
Yeah.
that energy.
I like what you said about the fact of like that scarcity mindset, because I do feel like dating over 40, and like I'm 44. I yeah, I think I just turned 44. But like I think that's the thing, is because I remember when I got divorced, my dad had said to me, like, "Well, what are you gonna do with your life now? Like, you're getting divorced." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? I'm gonna be happy? I'm gonna live it?" Like, why does being married and having a house and a kids and all the thing mean that like, I've arrived? So it was really settling into and accepting the fact that like I can have such a fulfilling, happy life being a single woman in my 40s and have my cup full. And
Mhm.
if I choose to have a straight sexual relationship or a straight sexual encounter, I can give myself permission to do it for that purpose without the attachment and expectation that who I'm doing that with is going to provide something more, and like detaching from it. Yep, I did this, we exchanged this, and I'm okay with the fact that that's all we exchanged, but then not trying to drag them through into my life. It's just like
Mhm.
leaving it at the door. And I feel
Yeah.
like since doing that, where it's just like, yeah, I don't have to sit at home and be fucking Martha Stewart with, like my legs crossed, not have fun, and think that if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to be able to find a quality man or husband or boyfriend or whatever. I can still, if I need to, have my needs met from the appropriate person that aligns with that task only, and
Mhm.
then cut it and move forward, continuing to still look and honor what it is I'm looking for in an actual long term partner. And I feel like that's opened up more and allowed me to kind of sit into this place of being happy if I'm single, and happy when the right person comes into my life. And but I think women over 40 have all this pressure of like, if I don't find somebody now, am I going to be stuck alone? Or maybe I should accept that. Like everybody's always like, well, you're never going to find somebody that checks all the boxes. And so then you do feel like you need to settle. It's like, well, I guess he's okay. But it's like, fuck that. We should never have to settle no matter what age we're at. And especially in our 40s, of everything I think we've gone through as women that have survived marriages, survived divorce, and then come out on the other end to be, amazing single moms still doing life. Why would you start to settle now? If you didn't settle for in being in your marriage, why the fuck would you do it now just because you feel like there's this ticking time bomb that if you don't find a partner right now that you're never going to, or you're never going to be happy.
No, I totally
But
feel the same way. Like, I think that sometimes I do get sad and I get down because I feel like
mhm,
I know so many amazing single women in their 40s who
yeah.
are accomplished and smart and beautiful and really hardworking and have built amazing lives for themselves and have hobbies and,
Mhm.
interests, and they're really great people. The men don't keep up.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be matching. Like these women are taking care of their bodies, they're going to therapy, they're reading books. It's like not only are they living these great lives, but they're really like enriching their inner lives and becoming
Yeah.
they're ready to be great partners. Like they're doing so much work on
Yeah.
themselves, every facet. They're trying to be the best parent, the best employee, the best leader, like the best friend that they can be. And then I'm like, are men keeping up? And so I feel like there's like this gap between women and men in this era, like specifically this Gen X millennial age, where we are just not, we're outpacing men. Like we are just
Yeah.
we're successful in so many ways. And so that kind of scares me. But at the same time, I have to kind of flip that around and just trust that the universe is going to put the right person in my path. And like maybe it's now and maybe it's 10 years from now. You just
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen. Don't want seeking a partner to ever be like the determining factor in my life. I
Yeah.
don't ever want that to dictate the choices that I make
Mhm.
or where I decide to like guide my life or where I focus my energy. And so I think it's like just trusting that if I'm not paying attention to it, and I do try to put energy into it because I think if you don't put energy into something, it doesn't happen. But at the same time, not making that my
Yeah.
focus. It's like trying to find that right balance of energy. And I think you just have to figure out like what's the right amount of attention and space for you to give it. And it's going to ebb and flow with time. There are going to be times where
Totally.
no dating, and then there's times where you're just, like, on the apps and you're just putting your best self out there and seeing what happens, and I feel like when you put that energy out, like, sometimes it's met and sometimes it's not, kind of keeping that focus on yourself and your life kind of consistent. But, yeah, I mean, it's rough out there. I think a lot of women are having these conversations right now, like, what's, wrong with us? And it's like, nothing, there's too much right
Yeah.
with us.
Right?
Men are not good enough for us right now. We're expecting what we should finally.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think men are having this moment of feeling really confused by what do women really want from us and what is it going to take to be there. And I think it does go back to your point about like not being upfront with what they really want. I don't think that they have that same drive to know what they can do better. I
Mhm.
don't think they're reading the self-help books and going to therapy in the same numbers that women are. And so they don't necessarily know what they're putting out chaotic energy.
Yeah,
And then they complain
totally,
and they get the chaotic energy back. And it's like, bro, like your energy's all over the place. Like you don't seem to be aware of what you're putting out there. And then when you get a negative response, it's because you're not aware of what you're putting out. And like you have to have that awareness. You have to slow down.
totally.
And I think men use women to kind of do that emotional labor for them. Like, I think
Yeah,
that they're playing boyfriend, girlfriend because it's easier for them to learn these things relationally than it is for them to like talk it through with their dude bro friends. They're
no,
not
for
having the
sure.
conversations. They're not on podcasts like this right now
No,
talking it through. They're talking about, I don't know, basketball. Like, it's not the same, and then they're complaining about women, but they're not cleaning house and really understanding what they're bringing to the table. And I think that's like the most frustrating thing that can sometimes like make me feel bummed. But I'm just like, I don't know, I'm going to sit here and wait for you to come correct. I'm not going to lower my standards. And if I'm single forever living on a commune with my girlfriends in like 30 years, like, so be it, that's fine.
oh my god, I would so be into that, and I've said that to, like, all my friends. I'm like, "We just need to buy land and all live together, like, why not? I could do it and I'd be happy," you know? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm all for that. Okay, well, I'm excited to continue to, I guess, see what comes for you. So, I guess, like, in essence, you're gonna go keep going on dates. We're gonna keep checking back in, and you're going to share with us the men that you've met, where you're at in the process with them, the good, the bad, the ugly, what is happening, and I'm going to do it with you. However, I will be very honest. I did very recently just meet a guy last week,
Ooh.
and I really like him and I really like everything so far. So my fingers are crossed that when we talk again in a couple weeks, that he's still in the picture and that like everything's good. I would say he's probably one of the, it's funny when like you're literally handpicking and like describing to the universe what you want in a guy.
Yeah.
This is like like delivered. Like I've always said I want a guy who can cook, because people cooking for me is like how I feel loved. It's like cook for me and I'm yours, right? So he's got a chef background, he's been married, divorced, 2 young kids, doesn't want any more, but he's still young, health and fitness, into yoga, all the things, personal development, growth. I was just like, the fuck? I feel like literally I wrote you down and like there you are.
You manifested him.
Yes, but I'm a little nervous because he was celibate for the last 7 months and hasn't been with anybody or dated until now. So, I'm ready. He says he's open and looking, but I'm like, "Okay, so let's just see," right? So, we'll see. Hopefully in 2 weeks, we're still having a good conversation about this man.
Yes.
If not, we will still be talking about who you were dating, what's happened, and all of that fun stuff. So I'm excited for that. So you have a little bit of homework, to get out there, date some of these men. I'm excited to hear all the stories and see what's going on in the world of, dating for you in California. So, because in my mind, I still think dating in California sounds way better than dating in Edmonton, and it's got to be better. So, yeah.
I mean, if anything, we've got the better weather. I'm sitting here in shorts and a t-shirt because it's like almost 80 degrees today.
Yeah,
So
you have that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if this fails with this man, maybe I just need to come to California and start dating in California. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for sharing everything. And yeah, everybody stay tuned. We're gonna follow Sarah on her dating journey and see what happens. And hopefully, fingers crossed for you as well. That's like out of this comes a healthy relationship, somebody that you can meet that's a great partner, and all the good things as well. We'll manifest it for you too. Maybe we'll do that next episode, is like very clearly take some time, write it down on a piece of paper, what your perfect man would look like, not only physically, mentally, spiritually, all of those things. And then we're going to go over it.
I like that. Yeah, we'll do it.
Yes, I like that as well. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Sarah. We'll keep in touch and we'll get back into this in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening, everybody.